15 major Hollywood productions from 1991 lost studios more than $250 million combined. Star-driven vanity projects, sequels nobody wanted, and spectacularly bad timing turned this into one of the most catastrophic years for the film industry since 1971. The summer box office dropped 11% from 1990, and the Los Angeles Times dubbed it a flock of flops. Let's count them down. Late for Dinner opens our list as a science fiction comedy drama that time has completely forgotten. Castle Rock Entertainment and Columbia Pictures released this quirky film on September 20th, 1991, with $14 million behind it, and the domestic gross came in just under $9 million. Two men from 1962 get accidentally frozen and wake up in 1991, struggling to adjust to modern life, which sounds like a premise with real potential. Brian Wimmer, Peter Berg, and Marcia Gay Harden took the lead roles, and director W.D. Richter hoped to capture some of the magic from his cult classic Buckaroo Banzai. Opening in just over 1,000 theaters during a crowded fall slate didn't help matters, and audiences showed little appetite for the gentle tone Richter delivered. The film declined rapidly and never developed any kind of following. Today, it occasionally surfaces on streaming services as a curiosity piece, though most people have never heard of it. $5 million in losses might seem modest compared to what's coming, and that's exactly the point, because this set the tone for an industry hemorrhaging money. Company business paired Gene Hackman with ballet legend Mikhail Baryshnikov in a Cold War spy thriller, and MGM Pathé invested between $15 and $20 million expecting a hit. What they got instead was a gross of just $1.5 million in a severely limited release across only 232 theaters. Director Nicholas Meyer, the man behind Star Trek II and VI, later called the production a catastrophe in his memoir. The problem came down to timing. Berlin's Wall fell in 1989, the Soviet Union was dissolving, and a Cold War thriller suddenly felt like ancient history before it even reached audiences. Hackman was exhausted from 3 consecutive films and reportedly tried to back out of the project entirely. Baryshnikov allegedly disliked the finished product so much that he refused to do any publicity whatsoever. That severely limited release of just 232 theaters tells you everything about the studio's confidence level. Today, it serves as a fascinating time capsule of that awkward transitional period between Cold War cinema and post-Soviet realities. Delirious starred the beloved John Candy as a soap opera writer who suffers a head injury and wakes up inside his own show, able to control events by typing on a magical typewriter. MGM Pathé put $18 million into this fantasy comedy and got just $5.5 million back. Candy could be brilliant with the right material, and this high-concept idea offered plenty of opportunities for comedy. Raymond Burr appeared in what would become his final theatrical film, which adds a bittersweet quality to the whole project. Critics called the execution unfunny and poorly paced, saying the script squandered its clever premise on weak material. Opening weekend brought in just $1.8 million, and the film collapsed quickly against summer competition. Rotten Tomatoes currently shows a 27% score. Contemporary reviews praised Candy's commitment while lamenting everything surrounding him. Candy would pass just 3 years later in 1994, making this a disappointing late career entry for a genuinely talented comedic performer who deserved better material. Flight of the Intruder brought together Danny Glover, Willem Dafoe, and director John Milius for a Vietnam War drama based on Stephen Kuntz's best-selling novel. Paramount Pictures invested between $30 and $35 million, and the domestic gross landed at just under $15 million. Navy pilots, frustrated by restrictive rules of engagement, decide to launch an unauthorized mission. And with Milius behind the camera, the man who gave us Conan the Barbarian and Red Dawn, expectations ran high, and that's when catastrophic timing struck. January 18th, 1991 marked opening day, the exact week Operation Desert Storm began, and American audiences absorbed in real-time coverage on their televisions had zero appetite for a Vietnam drama. Critics also noted low-budget special effects and war film cliches that paled compared to recent successes like Born on the 4th of July. This financial disaster effectively ended John Milius's theatrical directing career, and he wouldn't direct another feature until 2011. The impressive cast makes it a curiosity for completists, but the timing could not have been worse for this particular project. Shattered marked a Hollywood stumble for German director Wolfgang Petersen, who was establishing himself after the massive success of Das Boot. MGM and Capella Films invested $22 million in this psychological thriller starring Tom Berenger, and it grossed just $11.5 million. Berenger plays a property developer recovering from a car crash who discovers disturbing secrets about his past life. The amnesia reveals dark secrets formula had worked before, but 1991 belonged to the Silence of the Lambs, and this derivative thriller offered nothing audiences hadn't seen better elsewhere. Principal photography required over 1,000 camera setups, which is double the typical number, and Berenger took only one day off during the entire 3-month shoot. Critics noted the twist was predictable and the pacing sluggish, giving it a 40% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Peterson bounced back quickly with In the Line of Fire in 1993 and Outbreak in 1995, making this a temporary stumble in an otherwise successful Hollywood career. Mobsters attempted to replicate the success of Young Guns by casting pretty boy actors in a gangster setting. Universal Pictures spent $23 million on this crime drama featuring Christian Slater, Patrick Dempsey, Richard Grieco, and Costas Mandylor as Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, and Frank Costello, and it grossed just over $20 million. Hollywood insiders came up with nicknames for it, calling it the Godson and Good-Looking Fellas. Roger Ebert noted it was the bloodiest gangster movie he could remember, with action so gratuitous it approached parody. Warren Beatty's acclaimed Bugsy depicted the same era and the same real-life figures that same year, and unfavorable comparisons were inevitable. Critics savaged the casting of television actors in roles associated with hardened criminals. 9% on Rotten Tomatoes tells you how that went over. Both Christian Slater and Anthony Quinn received Razzie nominations for Worst Supporting Actor, and Slater later acknowledged he had hoped the film would be like Bugsy, but it was not. Director Michael Karbelnikoff only made one more film before fading from the industry entirely. Return to the Blue Lagoon achieved something rare in cinema history, a 0% score on Rotten Tomatoes based on 32 reviews. Columbia Pictures spent $11 million on this sequel to the controversial 1980 original, and it earned under $3 million domestically. A 15-year-old Mila Jovovich and 19-year-old Brian Krause took the lead roles, essentially remaking the same story with different characters. Shot in Australia and Fiji, the film opened in August 1991 and collapsed immediately. Marketing emphasized the exotic setting and young, attractive leads, but critics found it as ridiculous as its predecessor. The Razzie Awards took notice, giving it 5 nominations, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, and Worst New Star for Jovovich. Jovovich herself has stated, "This is the worst movie she has ever done," which is notable given her later filmography. Reviewer Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times correctly predicted she should survive this particular shipwreck, and she went on to stardom in The Fifth Element and the Resident Evil franchise. Sometimes a terrible film can't keep genuine talent down. V.I. Warshawski was supposed to launch Kathleen Turner as a franchise action star, and Hollywood Pictures invested $24 million adapting Sarah Paretsky's popular female detective novels. The domestic gross stopped at just over $11 million. Author Sarah Paretsky was especially angry over the original script that subordinated her independent female detective to a male counterpart. Disney executives pushed for rewrites, and director Jeff Canoe wanted to add Turner's voiceover to capture the book's feel, but it was never recorded. The final product couldn't decide between serious noir and family-friendly adventure with a child sidekick. Marketing emphasized Turner's appeal while the movie delivered what critics called a kid stuff thriller. Owen Glaberman of Entertainment Weekly noted that Turner, with her leonine presence, remains a radiantly adult actress who deserves better. 24% on Rotten Tomatoes confirmed the critical disappointment. The failure effectively killed Turner's shot at an action franchise, though she reprised the character for BBC Radio 4 plays in 1993, suggesting the book's adaptation worked better in audio form. Oscar represented Sylvester Stallone's attempt to prove he could handle comedy, and Touchstone Pictures spent $35 million on this screwball farce directed by John Landis. The domestic gross came in under $24 million. Stallone plays a 1930s gangster trying to go legitimate in this remake of a 1967 French film. Landis had originally wanted Al Pacino, who left when offered $3 million for Dick Tracy, and Landis later said Oscar would have been a much better movie with Al. One famous preview card tells you everything about what went wrong. During test screenings, someone wrote, Why didn't he take his shirt off and end anybody? Audiences who spent a decade watching Stallone in action roles simply couldn't accept him in comedy. 11% on Rotten Tomatoes followed, along with Razzie nominations for Stallone, Landis, and Marissa Tomei. Here's the twist though. Director Jonathan Lynn visited the set at Landis's invitation and saw Tomei perform, and he knew he'd found his lead for My Cousin Vinny. The following year, Tomei won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, going from Razzie nominee to Oscar winner in 12 months. Stallone himself listed Oscar as a film he wished he hadn't made, alongside Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot. Another You represented the final collaboration between comedy legends Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, whose previous pairings in Silver Streak, Stir Crazy, and See No Evil, Hear No Evil had been commercial hits. TriStar Pictures invested $17 million, and it earned under $3 million. Original director Peter Bogdanovich was let go after 5 weeks, and none of his footage was used. The script was completely rewritten. Most heartbreakingly, Richard Pryor was visibly suffering from multiple sclerosis during filming, making physical comedy difficult for him. What happened at the box office was brutal. The film suffered one of the worst second weekend drops in history, a 78% decline from $1.5 million to just $335,000. Gene Siskel gave it half of 1 star out of 4, calling it a completely worthless comedy with no laughs. This represented the final pairing of two comedy geniuses who had genuine chemistry, and the material gave neither performer anything to work with. It effectively ended both performers' film careers, a sad footnote for two legends whose earlier collaborations remain beloved classics. The Marrying Man became one of Hollywood's most legendary production nightmares. Hollywood Pictures budgeted $15 million for this Neil Simon romantic comedy, but the final cost ballooned to $26 million. It grossed just $12.5 million. Premiere Magazine ran a blistering expose detailing the chaos. Alec Baldwin reportedly threw chairs and smashed phones. Kim Basinger refused extra takes and demanded constant hair adjustments. The couple, who began dating during filming and later married, showed up hours late, keeping entire crews waiting. Neil Simon walked off set when Basinger allegedly told him, "This isn't funny. Whoever wrote this doesn't understand comedy." The schedule ran a month over. The director was hospitalized with pneumonia and dehydration near the end of filming, and crew members received t-shirts reading, "I survived The Marrying Man." 13 test screenings took place when typical is 3. The massive negative publicity poisoned the film's chances before release, and Baldwin later called it the biggest mistake of his career. 9% on Rotten Tomatoes confirmed the disaster. Despite everything, Baldwin and Basinger married in 1993, though they divorced in 2002. Highlander II, The Quickening joins Return to the Blue Lagoon with a 0% Rotten Tomatoes score, and Interstar Releasing spent between $30 and $34 million on this sequel. It earned just over $15 million worldwide. The 2004 documentary, Highlander II, Seduced by Argentina, chronicles one of the most comprehensive production disasters in cinema history. Argentina was chosen to save money due to the weak peso, but Argentina's economy collapsed during filming, and the completion bond company seized control, effectively removing director Russell Mulcahy from his own project. Christopher Lambert threatened to walk but was contractually obligated to stay. Sean Connery agreed to return only after $3 million was placed in escrow before he would acknowledge the film existed, and he reportedly donated his entire salary to charity. Michael Ironside later admitted everyone involved was there for the money, calling the script something that read as if written by a 13-year-old. The film retconned immortals as aliens from planet Zeist, completely contradicting the original's mythology, and fans felt betrayed. Roger Ebert gave it half a star, calling it the most hilariously incomprehensible movie he had seen in many a long day. Director Mulcahy reportedly walked out of the world premiere after 15 minutes, and the film exists in at least 4 different versions as various parties tried to salvage it. All subsequent Highlander entries completely ignore it. The Bonfire of the Vanities cost Warner Brothers $47 million to adapt Tom Wolfe's best-selling novel, and it grossed just $15.5 million. The book about its failure became more famous than the film itself. Director Brian De Palma assembled Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, and Melanie Griffith for this satirical drama about Wall Street excess, but the casting was wrong from the start. The studio forced Willis on De Palma despite the character being British in the novel. Hanks, America's everyman, was fundamentally miscast as a cold-hearted Wall Street predator. constant problems plagued the production. The Jewish judge character was changed to African American to address racial criticism, replacing Alan Arkin with Morgan Freeman. F. Murray Abraham demanded billing above the title, and when denied, he removed his name from the film entirely. During Bronx location shoots, locals threw eggs and light bulbs at the crew. De Palma later admitted the initial concept was incorrect. Willis acknowledged he was miscast. Joel Siegel said, "You've got to be a genius to make a movie this bad." Wall Street Journal critic Julie Salomon was granted unprecedented access to the production, and her resulting book, The Devil's Candy, became more famous than the film. A definitive chronicle of Hollywood hubris. Nothing But Trouble was Dan Aykroyd's directorial debut, and Warner Brothers invested between $40 and $45 million. It grossed just $8.5 million, earning a D+ cinema score. Aykroyd claimed the story was based on a real experience from 1978 when he was pulled over in a rural town and taken to a bizarre middle-of-the-night trial. He assembled Chevy Chase, John Candy, and Demi Moore for this horror-comedy hybrid. Warner executives allowed Aykroyd's excesses because they believed they had another Beetlejuice on their hands. Aykroyd found it stressful playing two roles in heavy makeup while simultaneously directing. Chase was reportedly difficult on set and later trashed the movie, saying he only did it due to his friendship with Aykroyd. Critics called it a collision between Brazil and the Texas chain Saw massacre, and audiences expecting traditional comedy from Saturday Night Live, alumni were shocked by grotesque horror elements. Aykroyd won the Razzie for Worst Supporting Actor, and the film received 6 nominations total. He wrote an apology letter to the cast, taking full blame for the failure, and never directed another feature film. The film does contain Tupac Shakur's screen debut with Digital Underground, making it an unexpected footnote in hip-hop history. Hudson Hawk stands as 1991's most expensive disaster, with TriStar Pictures spending $65 million on Bruce Willis's passion project. Some sources cite $70 million. It grossed just over $17 million domestically. Willis conceived the character during his pre-stardom bartender days, and after becoming a superstar, he had leverage to finally make this surrealist heist comedy with musical numbers. The budget escalated from an initial $42 million as Willis controlled the production. Director Michael Lehman later revealed he asked his agent who he had to deal with to get off this movie. The agent encouraged him to hang in, but Lehman was clearly considering leaving. The production was chaotic from start to finish. The original actress dropped out after criticizing the script. Andie MacDowell was cast on short notice and didn't have time to learn an Italian accent. Danny Aiello demanded rewrites. TriStar head Mike Medavoy visited set and warned the director that if this failed, he would never work again. Marketing sold it as an action blockbuster similar to Die Hard, and audiences were blindsided by bizarre slapstick. Roger Ebert gave it a thumbs down, saying he watched it in appalled silence and didn't laugh once. The Razzies gave it their top dishonors: Worst Picture, Worst Director, and Worst Screenplay. It was also nominated for Worst Picture of the Decade. Razzie founder John Wilson called it the $65 million monument to cinematic self-indulgence that failed to gross even 1/3 of its cost. These 15 films collectively lost more than the entire production budget of Terminator 2. Judgment Day, the year's biggest hit. Nearly everyone involved recovered though. Tom Hanks won back-to-back Academy Awards within 5 years. Bruce Willis remained a major star. Stallone bounced back. De Palma made Carlito's Way. Hollywood's memory is short for those who can deliver hits, and 1991 wasn't a career graveyard so much as a temporary financial bloodbath from which most participants emerged relatively unscathed. Even the biggest disasters rarely end careers permanently. They just make for incredible stories decades later. If you enjoyed this look back at Hollywood's worst year, make sure to subscribe and check out our other videos covering financial disasters from different eras. The film industry has always been a gamble, and 1991 proved that even the biggest stars and most talented directors can lose spectacularly.